Imagine this. You're in the wilderness. It's cold. You're hungry. Night is falling, and there's no fire, no roof over your head, and no warm clothes. Now imagine surviving like this, not just for a night, but for generations. Long before fire was mastered or shelters were built, our ancestors roamed a dangerous, unforgiving world. They didn't have homes, they didn't have matches, and yet they survived. Not just survived, they thrived, multiplied, and laid the foundation for everything that came after. So how did they do it? Today, we're diving into one of the most overlooked chapters of human history. We're going back, way back, to explore how early humans survived without two of the most important tools in human evolution: fire and shelter. This is a story of raw survival, deep instinct, and incredible adaptation. Let's begin. To understand how cavemen survived without fire or shelter, we have to rewind to a time before Homo sapiens. Even before Homo erectus, who were the first to use fire, our ancestors lived as nomadic foragers. Think Homo habilis, or even earlier hominins like Australopithecus. These early humans lived entirely outdoors. No homes, no caves, unless one happened to be nearby. And fire? That came much later, at least 1 million years after the first hominins appeared. So how did they manage? First, the environment played a big role. Most early humans lived in equatorial Africa, where temperatures were warm year-round. They didn't need fire for warmth, and shelter from rain or wind was often found under trees, in thickets, or rocky overhangs. Food? They scavenged, not hunted. Early humans likely followed large carnivores, eating leftover meat and marrow from carcasses. They also ate fruits, roots, nuts, insects, and even small animals they could catch with bare hands. Their diet was raw, and their stomachs were tough. Without permanent shelters, they were always moving. This nomadic lifestyle helped them stay close to food and water. It also made them hard to catch, for predators and rival tribes alike. They didn't need much: a sharp rock, a few simple gestures, a sharp eye, and a sharper instinct. In fact, their lack of tools didn't mean they were stupid. It meant they had to be smarter, faster, and more in tune with nature than we can imagine. But there's even more to the story. Early hominins weren't aimless wanderers. They had patterns, territories, and deep-rooted knowledge of seasonal changes. They knew which trees bore fruit, where animals migrated, and how to avoid predators. Over generations, this knowledge accumulated into a mental map of survival. Communication was likely a critical factor. Though they didn't have complex language as we know it, early humans used vocalizations, gestures, and facial expressions to signal danger, organize group movement, and teach young members about food sources and threats. Group dynamics also mattered. Cooperation was essential. From forming protective circles at night to sharing food among the weak and elderly, survival wasn't a solo act. It was a collective strategy. This early social cohesion laid the groundwork for what would become complex human societies. More than survival, they developed culture, however rudimentary. Early humans began to recognize landmarks, create patterns, and even develop primitive tools and rituals that slowly expanded their ability to shape their world. They were already experimenting with change. Some researchers believe these groups even had early forms of spirituality. Evidence from burial sites and cave markings suggests that our ancestors may have had rituals, beliefs, or symbols long before shelters or flames were part of their daily lives. Even without permanent structures, they built meaning into their world. One of the biggest myths about prehistoric humans is that they were constantly cold, miserable, and just one bad night away from extinction. But survival isn't about luxury, it's about efficiency. Without fire or shelter, early humans became experts in using their own bodies and nature as tools. Take thermoregulation. Early humans had thicker body hair and were more muscular, helping them retain body heat. They knew how to huddle together for warmth, how to find windbreaks in nature, and when to move to warmer terrain. They also moved in sync with the sun. They rose at dawn, rested at midday, and found safe places before nightfall. They traveled in groups, not just for safety, but for warmth and support. Their sense of community was one of their most important survival tools, and they knew the land. They understood animal behavior, weather patterns, and which plants could help or harm. This knowledge wasn't written down. It was passed on through mimicry, sound, and shared experience. Even without fire to cook, they found ways to make food more digestible by pounding, grinding, or soaking it. Nature was both their kitchen and their pharmacy. They also evolved remarkable endurance. Humans are among the best long-distance runners in the animal kingdom. That trait helped early humans follow prey, escape threats, and cover vast areas in search of food, without the need to settle or build. Their sensory awareness was acute. In a world without artificial light or sound, early humans developed heightened hearing and night vision, allowing them to detect predators or track movement with incredible accuracy. Another overlooked factor is sleep. Early humans often slept lightly, in shifts, and with one eye figuratively, sometimes literally, open. This polyphasic sleep pattern helped them stay vigilant and responsive to danger, even in the absence of physical shelter. Their immune systems were also conditioned through continuous exposure to the elements. Dirt, bacteria, and parasites were a constant part of life. Their bodies learned to survive in balance with nature's microbial world, something modern humans are only beginning to understand again. Cognitive flexibility was another major asset. Without written language or structured education, learning happened entirely through observation and trial. Problem-solving became instinctive. These early humans became mental athletes, constantly testing, adapting, and recalibrating their behavior to survive. And let's not forget their emotional intelligence. Group living required empathy, cooperation, and conflict resolution. These so-called primitive people had to manage complex social networks, skills just as vital as tool-making. Still, one question remains. If fire and shelter are so essential, how did they evolve at all without them? Here's the twist. Living without fire and shelter didn't hold our ancestors back. It made them better survivors. Think about it. Fire brings comfort, but also dependency. It requires fuel, maintenance, and creates smoke that reveals your location. Permanent shelters make you stationary and vulnerable to attack or disaster. By not relying on these things, early humans stayed light, fast, and adaptable. They became ultra-observant. They learned to live with nature, not apart from it. Some researchers even argue that the lack of fire pushed the human brain to develop. Without cooked food, our ancestors had to chew more, forage more, and solve more daily survival puzzles, all of which stimulated mental development. Their movement patterns kept them healthy. Constant walking meant strong legs, good posture, and cardiovascular fitness. Living outdoors meant sunlight, which meant vitamin D, crucial for bone health and immunity. Even their sleep adapted. Without artificial light, early humans slept in shorter cycles, often waking up for an hour or two during the night. This biphasic sleep may have improved vigilance and helped them stay alert to danger. The absence of fire may have also preserved their connection to the natural environment. Without artificial light, they moved according to moon phases and animal activity. Their internal clocks were set by the stars. And shelter. Its absence meant learning to read terrain like a second language, where the wind would cut deepest, where water pooled after rain, where predators might lurk at dusk. Their minds became living maps, adaptable, instinctive, and always scanning. There's even evidence suggesting that early humans used nonverbal systems like body language or spatial memory in a highly advanced way. Their cognitive demands were constant and practical, sharpening a kind of environmental intelligence we rarely use today. Living without fire also forced early humans to become extremely energy efficient. They had to expend calories wisely, balancing the cost of activity with the gain of nutrition. This natural economy drove strategic thinking and long-term memory. Another irony, the lack of shelter encouraged innovation. To cope with environmental challenges, early humans modified their surroundings subtly, using branches to form windbreaks, digging shallow pits to stay warm, or reusing natural landmarks as recurring camps. These minimal interventions foreshadowed architecture. So while modern comfort zones encouraged stagnation, discomfort drove ancient creativity. And in that contradiction, we find one of humanity's greatest strengths. The truth is, what we see as primitive was actually profoundly practical. The more we look into it, the more it seems that not having fire or shelter wasn't a weakness. It was a hidden strength. So, what changed? Let's follow the life of one hypothetical group, a small band of Homo habilis living in East Africa roughly 2 million years ago. They wake before sunrise. The air is cool but not cold. They're camped under a tall acacia tree near a stream. The matriarch stirs first, checking for danger. The group eats leftover berries and nuts from the day before. A juvenile finds a bone with marrow and cracks it open using a sharp rock, a skill learned by watching others. They move quickly. The sun is rising, and predators are on the prowl. They travel light. No bags, no tents, no tools beyond a stone or two. By mid-morning, they reach a shaded area where fruit trees grow. The children forage while the adults scan the horizon. One elder finds a termite mound, a treasure trove of protein. They use sticks to extract the insects, laughing as the younger ones squirm. As the sun reaches its peak, they rest, not because they're lazy, but because they know it's dangerous to travel in the heat. Some nap in the shade. Others groom each other, removing parasites and strengthening bonds. By dusk, they find a rocky overhang. It's not a home, but it offers some protection. The night will be quiet, but not safe. They huddle together, muscles tense, ears alert. Rain begins to fall. Water collects in hollows nearby, offering a drink. One child tries mimicking bird calls, imitating what they've heard during the day. The others laugh. In this moment, there's no fire, no walls, just survival and connection. Later, they hear hyenas in the distance. The group presses close. One adult quietly climbs a tree to keep watch. Below, the youngest members fall asleep to the sound of breathing and rustling leaves. As dawn approaches, the sky turns purple and pink. The band prepares to move. A new day means new risks, but also new possibilities. Ripe figs, a shaded grove, a spring that hasn't yet dried out. The matriarch grunts softly, and the group begins to walk. They carry no tools, no baggage, no guarantees, just each other, just memory, instinct, and trust. That's what kept them alive then. That's what built the world we now live in. And yet, they live. They adapt. And in doing so, they continue the human story. So why does this ancient story matter today? Because it challenges everything we think we need to survive. We live in a world of instant comfort, heating, air conditioning, shelter at the push of a button. But our ancestors had none of that, and they were still remarkably resilient. In fact, many survival experts today study these early humans to relearn forgotten skills. How to read the weather, how to find edible plants, how to track animals, make tools, and find natural shelter. Bushcraft, primitive living, and survivalist communities are growing in popularity. Not because we want to abandon comfort, but because we want to remember how to live without it. There's a growing realization that our dependence on technology makes us fragile, and that our ancestors, despite their lack of tools, were incredibly strong, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Even modern science is catching on. Studies in evolutionary biology show that walking barefoot, fasting occasionally, and sleeping outdoors have measurable health benefits. Traits that helped early humans survive are still wired into our DNA. Consider this: people are turning to cold plunges, intermittent fasting, and minimalist lifestyles, practices rooted in our evolutionary past. These trends aren't new, they're rediscovered. We've become used to convenience. But when the power goes out or the GPS signal drops, we get a small taste of what our ancestors faced every day. And those moments remind us we're not as helpless as we think. In fact, resilience training, survival simulations, and wilderness retreats are becoming tools not just for adventurers, but for CEOs, athletes, and everyday people seeking mental clarity. These experiences echo the lives of early humans and remind us that stress, discomfort, and challenge can also be paths to strength. The idea of resilience is now making its way into therapy, education, and business. Modern humans are realizing that we thrive not in ease, but in challenge, that facing adversity shapes character, and sometimes even genius. So maybe the caveman way wasn't backward. Maybe it was balanced, and maybe we have more to learn from them than we think. When we picture cavemen, we often imagine struggle, brutality, chaos. But the truth is far more complex and far more inspiring. Without fire or shelter, early humans didn't just scrape by. They adapted, they evolved, they formed bonds, passed down knowledge, and tuned themselves to the rhythm of the earth in ways we've largely forgotten. They weren't weak, they weren't stupid. They were us, just in a different time, facing different challenges with the same basic goal: to survive, to thrive, and to find meaning in the world around them. Their legacy is in our blood. Every step they took led to where we are now. Every challenge they overcame carved the path to the civilizations we've built. And maybe in remembering how they lived without the things we now take for granted, we can rediscover some of that resilience, that clarity, that connection. Because if they could survive without fire or shelter, maybe we can survive without the noise, the excess, and the constant comfort we think we need. Maybe we already have everything it takes. If this journey into our ancient past opened your eyes, let us know in the comments. What would you do without fire or shelter? Could you survive a week as a caveman? And if you want more deep dives into how humans beat the odds, subscribe now. We've got plenty more stories from the edge of history coming soon. Thanks for watching.